A leading solar mini-grid solutions provider, Give Projects Limited, says it is contributing to the evolving grid energy sector in the country. The company's chief executive officer, Ifeanyi Orajaka, pointed out the role of its partners and the Akwa Ibom state government in the success of the project, which will energize communities and create jobs. He was speaking at the commissioning of a power plant constructed and operated by GVE Projects Limited.
Akwa Ibom community in Ona local government area of Akwa Ibom state is one of the 12 communities to benefit from the first set of grants under the Rural Electrification Fund. The project has installed 306 solar panels with 5.5-kilometer distribution network across the country. There are 440 connections comprising residential and commercial buildings. At the commissioning ceremony, the Executive Director, Rural Electrification Fund of the Rural Electrification Agency, Dr. Sanusi Ohiare, urges the people to maximize the benefits of the project by engaging in small businesses.
It is important to know that as you begin to utilize electricity, there will be a boost in economic activities, leading to greater investments in the future. I urge you all to use this electricity to grow your local economies, start new businesses, confident that you now have the reliable electricity to power shops, cold rooms, schools, and much more.
The Chief Executive Officer, GVE Projects Limited, developers of the project, Ifeanyi Orajaka, gives details of the enterprise.
What we have here is a 100 kilowatt PV solar mini-grid system that is generating electricity from the sun and that will power over 400 households here in Akwa Ibom community.
The member representing Ona State constituency in the State House of Assembly, Mr. Nse Essien, expressed appreciation for the project, noting that it will boost the economy of the area.
We thank the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for approving funds to the Rural Electrification Agency to come and do this wonderful work. And we thank also the governor of the state who had given the enable environment and had done the access road for the people to have road to access this community.
The project was completed within 6 months.
To some company news, the new acting managing director of the Niger Delta Development Commission, the NDDC, Joy Nunez, says the commission will impact all rural communities spread across the Niger Delta region. Mrs. Nunez says her team will pursue the developmental program of President Muhammadu Buhari.
It's a beehive of activity at the headquarters of the Niger Delta Development Commission in Port Harcourt River State, as management and staff of the commission welcome the interim new acting managing director, Dr. Joy Nunez, and her team. Their first port of call is the office of the outgoing MD, Dr. Akwa Ibom, for the official handover ceremony to the three-man management committee. After the handover, Dr. Enya leads the new acting managing director, the acting executive director project, Dr. Cairo Jubo, and the acting executive director of finance and administration, Chief Ibang Abasi Atang, to the conference room to meet with the staff of the commission.
From the academia, he has also traversed colleges.
Dr. Enya urges the directors and staff of the commission to cooperate with the new management committee to reposition the image of the agency by adhering to its corporate culture.
And I urge the directors in the various directorates, departments and units to cooperate with this team so that all the negative news we've been hearing about NDDC will come to an end.
For the new acting managing director, she's delighted and appreciative of the president's confidence in her to lead the agency. She says that there will be no compromises in her assignment and promises to take the developmental programs of the president to the rural areas where every village will feel the impact of their intervention.
I want to assure everyone in the region, Mr. President and the Honorable Minister, that every village in the Niger Delta, not local government areas, not states, but every village will know that there's a new management in NDDC.
The committee, inaugurated by the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, is to oversee the activities of the Niger Delta Development Commission during the period of the forensic audit ordered by President Muhammadu Buhari, and a lot rests on this new management to reinvent the core agenda for which the commission was set up, which is developing the Niger Delta region.
Business News is next. Here's Jeffrey Uzono.
Thanks, Amarachi, and welcome to Business News. 14 companies have made bids for the financing and redevelopment of oil mining lease 119. Now, that's according to the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, the NNPC. The group managing director of the state oil firm, Mr. Mele Kyare, who made this known today in Abuja, says the OML 119 is one of the NNPC's critical projects, which aligns with the federal government's goal of boosting crude oil and gas production, growing reserves, and monetizing the country's gas resources. Meanwhile, the corporation has assured the companies that the selected process for the bid will remain transparent and fair. OML 119, which is operated by NNPC's subsidiary, the Nigerian Petroleum Development Company Limited, is a twin offshore block made up of Okono and Okpoho fields located within the southeastern Niger Delta. Nigerian foreign reserve lost an average of $43.6 million daily, or $1.26 billion within the 4 weeks of October. Now, this is the latest data from the central bank. It shows that the reserves, which stood at $41.17 billion as at October the 2nd, fell to $40.50 billion by the end of the month. Survey also shows that the largest drops in actual terms occurred between October 4th to the 7th, which is recorded a drop of $190.3 million, $149.18 million between October 11 to 14, and $115.4 million between October 18 to October 24. Analysts attribute the reduction in foreign reserves to a slowdown in foreign direct investments, low oil prices, debt servicing obligations, and continued intervention in the foreign exchange market by the central bank. And outside Nigeria, South Africa's seasonally adjusted Absa Purchasing Managers Index, PMI, continued to contract in October, despite improvement in the business activities and new sales orders. The survey released today by the Financial Services Group shows that the index, which gauges manufacturing activities in South Africa, mostly contributed to 48.1 points in October from a revised 45.1 in the previous month. Absa further explains that both indices remained below the 50-point mark, which separates expansion from contraction, pointing to a decline in demand and output. Now, the month of November kicks off to a negative start at the Nigerian Stock Exchange, as fresh round of profit-taking from consumer goods key components dragged the main index back by 0.25%. Let's get the details of today's trading from Edidiong Iwang.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. After losing 620 billion naira in the month of October, the first trading day of November kicks off in the red, down 0.24% on the back of losses from MTN Nigeria, Nigerian Breweries and Nestle. Sector performances were mixed on Friday as consumer goods shed 2.08% and insurance lost 0.26%. On the flip side, industrial goods gained 1.15%, banking added 1.04%, and oil and gas was up 0.80%. The banking sector's performance is evident on the list of top trades as big lenders such as Zenith, UBA and GT Bank were highest on the table. Total turnover of shares traded on Friday were lower compared to Thursday's session as 252.36 million shares worth 3.7 billion naira were exchanged in over 2,800 deals. University Press was the highest gainer for the day, while Champion Breweries lost the most. Well, that's the stock market report for the day and the week. I'm Edidiong Iwang.
That's it on Business News tonight. I'm Jeffrey Uzanga. Amarachi is back to you.
Thanks, Jeffrey. The UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has rejected suggestions from Nigel Farage and the US President Donald Trump to work with the Brexit Party during the election. He also suggested that President Trump was wrong to believe that a trade deal would be impossible with the UK after Brexit. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening from the Channel's newsroom in London. The Brexit Party leader has challenged Boris Johnson to drop his deal with the European Union, saying it's a bad treaty. With 6 weeks to go until the general election, members of Parliament are in full campaign mode. The withdrawal agreement is dominating discussions, and the Brexit Party leader, Nigel Farage, has warned he'll contest every seat in the country if the Prime Minister doesn't agree to a creation of a Leave alliance.
I'm going to say this to Boris Johnson: drop the deal. Drop the deal because it's not Brexit. Drop the deal because as these weeks go by and people discover what it is that you've signed up to, they will not like it.
That's after Donald Trump got involved. On a radio show, he said the UK could secure better trade deals with the US if it ditched the current agreement.
Your trade with us could be 4 to 5 times higher than it is right now. That would make your country much bigger economically than it is right now, and you're being held back by the European Union. I have great relationships with many of the leaders, including Boris. He's a fantastic man, and I think he's the exact right guy for the times, and I know that you and him will end up doing something that could be terrific. If you and he get together, it's, you know, unstoppable force. And Corbyn would be so bad for your country. He'd be so bad, he'd take you in such a bad way.
The opposition Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, criticised the president for interfering in British politics and accused him of trying to get his friend elected. The Scottish National Party leader, Nicola Sturgeon, was also unimpressed.
What we heard from Donald Trump in that extraordinary exchange with Nigel Farage, you know, pointing a pretty scary future ahead for the UK, is that he'll drive a hard bargain, and that's the real concern. Donald Trump will want the NHS on the table, whatever he might say right now. He wants food standards, environmental standards, workers' rights, and that's what the future holds if we allow Boris Johnson to take us down that track.
Firefighters have been facing what's been described as apocalyptic scenes in California.
Pretty difficult situation, so they're doing what they can. It's hard to fight fire in these conditions.
Fierce winds fueled wildfires for a second day, destroying homes and forcing evacuations. Crews have been battling about a dozen major blazes across the state, the most destructive in San Bernardino. Tens of thousands of people have been left homeless in the Central African Republic. Severe flooding, said to be the worst in a decade, has destroyed properties and claimed at least 5 lives. Matthew Laratonda reports.
Alan Boone Pasteur is wading through the flooded grounds of a school. Once a vibrant place in Bangui, Central African Republic, it's now overrun by water. Yet another casualty of catastrophic floods which have left more than 35,000 people homeless, according to the International Red Cross.
All the students have to stay at home. You know, here in our complex we have around 1,000, more than 1,000 students, and so you can see the amount of waste this is causing. And we have only just started school less than 2 months ago, and we find ourselves in this catastrophic situation.
Continuous rains caused a major river to burst its banks. At least 5 people have died. Residents say they haven't seen such flooding for at least a decade. A temporary shelter has been set up in the capital's main basketball stadium, but it has no basic facilities like toilets or cooking areas. Authorities now fear a rise in waterborne illnesses.
Hundreds of Algerians have returned to the streets, protesting against the ruling elite. They've been gathering for 37 weeks, demanding former regime allies be dismissed ahead of the presidential election on December the 12th. The demonstration came on the 65th anniversary of the revolution against French colonial rule. Banks in Lebanon have opened for business for the first time in 2 weeks. It follows a wave of protests that led to the resignation of the Prime Minister, Saad Hariri. There were huge queues in the capital as people waited to gain access to their money. The major banks imposed limits on cash withdrawals.
لا جاي اليوم بدي اسحب مبلغ which اكيد ما خلوني اسحب انا اللي كان بدي اياه لكرمال الشركه. I need a cash amount يعني وقالوا لي انه في limitation على السحب وسافا يعني I understand كل واحد بالنهايه جاي يسحب.
And finally, it was a night of horror in Hollywood.
Happy Halloween!
Americans take Halloween seriously, and costumes at the annual carnival didn't disappoint. Thousands of revelers turned out for some fun. Many were dressed to scare, realistic makeup bringing gory scenes to life, while others opted for more traditional costumes. The event is thought to be the biggest Halloween party on the planet. And that's your international news around the world in 5.